Hi guys, this is Charlie from Vamos Gaming Systems. So today I'll go through a video about disassembly as well as repaste and repad of the Gigabyte 3070 Ti gaming OC. So I already have my videos recorded. So this is the model that we're going to be disassembling, and we're going to repaste and with PTM 7950 as well as Repad. Initially I was going to use Gelid pads, but as you will see later in the video, I ran into some issues with the contact pressure. Again, this is I think the second or third time I ran into issues with the hardness of the Gelid pads. So then I went to a different kind of OEM thermal pads, which actually kind of did a lot better. So let's go through why we need to repaste first. Okay, so as usual, you can see my so-called my advertisement for repaste and repad services in Singapore. If you Google for like a GPU temperature reduction or GPU cleaning, you can probably find my ad on Carousell. You can contact me through there, or you can contact me through my website. My WhatsApp number is, I believe, in the video description or in my website, which is vamosgamingsys.com, and you can contact me through there, through WhatsApp. So I tried to run a benchmark when the customer passed it to me. He complained about like his GPU would hit high hotspot temps, and once it hit high hotspot temps, like immediately, like after load, like once loading a game or something, and then after that the GPU will be very loud, and soon after it will shut down. So like his not shut down, his PC will black screen, but the PC is still running, and he has to do a manual restart in order to get his PC back working. So it's giving him like tremendous issues because he can't really play a game or load anything intensive on his GPU. So ask me to see whether I can reduce temps and whether it would help. Otherwise, you have to buy a new GPU. So when I so this is the like heaven benchmark temperatures of once I initially received his GPU, and I tried to do benchmark on heaven, and immediately, as you will see, the hotspot ramps up to 105. This is only like 1 minute into the benchmark, as you can see here. Maybe I can use Epic Pen. Yep, so that it's easier to highlight things on the screen. Okay, we use red. So you can see that we're only 1 minute into the benchmark, and hotspot temps is already hitting 105, GPU temps is hitting 90, and the fan ramps up incredibly loud. This is beyond, like, this is the max, right? This is the maximum RPM. It ramps up to, GPU fan ramps up to like 4,000 RPM in an effort to try and keep the hotspot temps down so that it can continue its operations. So it was tremendously loud, sounded like a jet engine, and it wasn't sustainable. So after a while, the fan speed dropped down back to 3001, but it still couldn't keep the heat down. And soon after, just like the so-called the owner of the GPU mentioned, my screen went black while my system was still running, and I had to do a manual restart. So I reported my findings to him, and he agreed. So it's the same issue. Then we went into disassembly and so-called repaste. Okay, so we'll start from here, right? And let's see whether I can mute my video. Okay, so I'll skip through this mostly. As you can see on his, there are only, actually that it's quite easy to disassemble. There are 8 screws, so there's one here, one here, one here, here. So this is 4 for the, like, it will bind the backplate to the PCB, as well as we have 4 here, which secures the like the GPU, ensures proper like contact pressure between the GPU die as well as the heatsink. Okay, so I'll fast forward through some of these. Yep, so I use like an automated sort of like electronic screwdriver to unscrew them. Yep. So usually it's a little bit, if you have not disassembled the GPU in a long time, usually it's a little bit hard. So you just use a plastic prying tool. Obviously try to avoid metal prying tools, as you might damage components. Just use a plastic prying tool. If you don't have this kind of specific spatula or spudgel to, like, for disassembly, like a toolkit like that, you can actually use a wooden chopstick or wooden stick or something like that. Okay, so for this particular fan, there are actually 3 fan cables on this. For this particular one, it was really stuck there. So when I was pulling it out, the whole like how should I say, the socket came off with it. But it is usually fine. Like you can see that I wiggle, the whole socket came off. After the socket comes off, it's still fine. All you need to do is to pry open the socket from the fan header, and then the socket is just a piece of like plastic where you can just fit it back onto the pins and you'll be fine. So there's no permanent damage done, right? Just fit it back in the correct orientation. Then as usual, as you can see, the paste is all hard. So I kind of scrape off the hardened paste with just my spudule tool is plastic, it's soft, it doesn't hurt the GPU die. And I do the same for, as you can see, on the copper cold plate. Then I just go and clean it off, sweep off the crumbs into the dustbin. Okay, we'll fast forward a bit. So here, measuring the thermal pad thickness. So you take a piece of the existing thermal pad, which is crumbly, and measure it. So for context, right, actually, if you're doing this yourself, you do not need to replace the thermal pads. Even if you see that the thermal pads are crumbly, it is because this kind of thermal pads usually, it is of the better quality ones used by Gigabyte are actually more crumbly. So they have better thermal conductivity. And then they act more like a one-time use kind of thermal pad. But if you don't move the crumbly thermal pads and you reassemble everything, right, you'll find that your memory temps still stay the same. You actually don't really have to remove them. Personally, I'm only doing this because the customer requested for a change of thermal pads. But if you're doing this yourself, most of the time, just a simple repaste of your GPU die will be sufficient. Thermal pads actually last a long time. Even if it looks crumbly, they actually still work perfectly fine. And as you can see, replacing thermal pads is actually quite tricky. You see later in the video that replacing it is actually quite tricky because it's not just the thickness of the thermal pads that you have to match up. You also have to match up the softness of the thermal pads. And in my case, I have like a wide stash. I have quite a few different kinds of thermal pads, and I have 2 different kinds of thermal putties, so that if none of the thermal pads work, then I can still resort to thermal putties. And I have thermal pad thickness from 0.5 millimeter all the way to like 2 and 2.5 millimeter. And I have like 3 different kinds of thermal pads, 2 different kinds of thermal putties, all varying thickness, because I do this for profit, right? So I do this on a regular basis and I'm getting paid to do this. But obviously, if you're doing it yourself, just buying the thermal pads alone can be quite pricey. I believe they cost at least 20 over to 30 over Sing dollars just for a single like decent share of thermal pads. So if you're not sure of the thickness of the pads, and you might buy the pads and it actually ends up doesn't working, it might be too big of an investment for you. So I would say, to save time, generally don't try changing the thermal pads. Unless you absolutely really want to. Then just repasting it is more than enough. So here I actually remove. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So here, there are actually 6 screws again. I think 5. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these screws are tying down the the heatsink to the fan shroud. So I'll just fast forward a bit. Yep. Then as you can see, once this is out, yep, the heatsink is out. So I just do a simple brush clean. So customer initially requested for a deep clean, but I recommended him that actually you don't need to pay for a deep cleaning service because his GPU doesn't look that dirty, it's not that rusty. So I just did a very simple brush clean instead. And it will do the job perfectly fine. Then later, as you can see, so the fan shroud is a little bit dusty, so I just do a simple dusting. It didn't need to go to a level whereby I had to dismantle everything and wash it and scrub it with soap and all that. Obviously that will be cleaner, but that takes a lot more effort and takes a lot more time as well. So if you're doing it yourself, a simple brush clean is more than enough. You don't have to do a deep clean just like some of my other videos. Then for the fans, so you can see the underside of the fans is quite dusty, so I use a fast forward a bit, use a damp cloth, and with my fingers slowly clean the inside of the fans. If your fingers are a little bit on the thicker end, if you are like, no, if you're a big guy, because I'm pretty small, dude, I have smaller fingers, so I can, no, raccoon like fingers, right? Like the greatest technician of all time. So I can fit it into the small grooves here. But if you have thicker fingers and you can't fit the damp cloth with your fingers into the grooves of the fan here, what you can do is you can actually use like this kind of tool, like a tweezer, or like I mentioned, a pair of wooden, a stick, a single piece of wooden chopstick, and you can fit the end of it to the damp cloth, and you can just like fit it inside the holes here to try and clean the underside of your fan using the damp cloth. Obviously, I try and regularly switch to a different side of the cloth to get a fresh side of the cloth. Then you just wash the cloth with soap and detergent later. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so fan underside clean. You can see that this makes a difference, right? So where is it? Like this is clean fans compared to earlier, where this is, where is it? This shot. This is dusty fans, and this is clean fans, right? So it makes a big difference. Does it affect performance? Maybe marginally. It doesn't affect that much, but just having clean fans is nice to look at. It's hygienic, and just gives you that brand new GPU look, right? It's just pleasant. Okay, so I've been done. Then I rescrew the heatsink back onto the fan shroud. So as mentioned, there are 5 screws, 1, 2 here, 3, 4 here, and 5. So there are 5 screws. The 2 of these screws are a little bit deeper inside the fan shroud, so you have to use a screwdriver that is thinner and longer. In my case, I'm using one of those precision screwdriver kits I bought from AliExpress that has the stem can be extended, so it's a little bit thinner. If not, you have to look for a screwdriver that's on a thinner and longer end. Okay, so after that is done, just clean off the cold plate. And in this case, we're going to be applying PTM 7950 rather than liquid metal, because in a lot of my other videos, you will see liquid metal applied. But I've just gotten a stock of PTM 7950 from AliExpress. I don't know whether it's legit, but based on the performance, I think it's actually legit. Then yeah, so just clean off the GPU die there. So a reminder, this is a Gigabyte 3070ti. Die, I don't know what's the die name. GPGA. Can we see it in the reflection? No, we can't catch it in the reflection. But can see clean die. And oh, I'm redoing the thermal pads first. So in this video, I'm applying the Gelid Gelid. What's the brand here? GP-Extreme. So you can see that I'm using the Gelid GP-Extreme version of the thermal pad. Technically, this is the softer version of the Gelid pads. If I'm not wrong, there's a GP Ultimate, which has better thermal conductivity, but it's supposed to be even harder than the GP-Extreme. And you will see later during the benchmarks that even with this softer Gelid GP-Extreme, Extreme thermal pads, it is I'm already running into contact pressure issues. So the issue that I had with this pads is that yes, it is 2.0 millimeter pads. It is the same as what I measured. But if you see the crumbly thermal pads, right, they are pretty deformed. So this original stock thermal pads from Gigabyte, they're actually really, really soft. They're very soft. They are for like one-time application only, and they really mold well to like between the VRAM chips as well as the heatsink. So even I think the stock thermal pads, it's probably 2.5, but after compression they are compressed down to 2.0, and maybe even like less than 2.0 because of the softness. But you'll see later during benchmarks that my GPU temps was actually high, like higher than what I expected, because I was probably having insufficient pressure from the heatsink to the GPU die. And this insufficient pressure is caused by this thermal pads being a little bit too hard. So they are being too hard, they can't compress properly, and as a result, we don't have proper pressure or enough pressure on the GPU die. So this pads I've seen a few use. So this Gelid pads, I've applied to a few of my customer GPUs, but because of the contact pressure issue, yeah, I've actually removed them and then reapplied them, and this probably the, I don't know, the second or third time I'm removing it. Okay. Yeah, so they no longer stick as well. The adhesive part of the thermal pads has gone away, but they still work fine, as you can see later in the benchmarks. Okay, so there's that. So I'm just measuring the size of the die to estimate what is the size of the PTM 7950 that I have to cut. And you will see here, this sheet is a PTM 7950, the gray one from AliExpress. I got them for pretty cheap. Like this whole piece is about $25 to $30. Yeah, I think about 25-ish Sing dollars. So I will consider that pretty cheap because you can actually apply it on many of your devices, such as CPUs as well as GPU dies. Yep, so I'm cutting it to size based on my measurements, and then using the initially I tried to use a pen knife, but it wasn't so good, so I end up using a scissors to cut it out. Okay, oh wait, that's too fast. Yep. So how do we apply it? It comes both sides. There's a plastic peel, so you just peel it on one side and then stick it in. Yep. So just press down and it sticks. So I made a mistake here of trying to peel the top plastic peel without using tape. So what is recommended, I actually watch some YouTube guides after doing this application, and the actually recommended method is not to use tweezers or anything like that, because as you can see, if I use tweezers, I'll kind of rip up the PTM pads. And the actual recommended method is to use sticky tape. They actually did include sticky tape in the packaging, like here, right on the right side here. This here is actually sticky tape. So the recommended method is to use a sticky tape, stick it on the plastic above, right? And to use the sticky tape and lift up the ends of the plastic. So you can use Scotch tape as well. As you can see, whenever I try to peel, yeah, so a little bit of the PTM, like the corners is a little bit ripped. Like you can see, maybe until my head gets out of the way. Yeah, so you can see the corners here are a little bit ripped. It's a bit ripped here and here. So if I use sticky tape, probably I could have made a slightly better application. But the recommended method online is also to cut a little bit more excess. Like this is the size of GPU die. In order to prepare for a little bit of rip pads, actually cut a little bit more, like around this size, just a little bit bigger than the actual GPU die size, so that even if the corner rips, you still have enough PTM 7950 to cover your whole GPU die. Or the CPU die if you are applying for CPU. Okay, so there's that. So I just put back a little bit of the ripped stuff. It should be fine. Yeah. Then we just reassemble. So make sure to plug in the fan connectors. There are 3 fan connectors for this Gigabyte 3070ti gaming OC version. So we plug all the fan connectors and ensure that the holes match up. Like you can see that here, or the 4 holes. Ensure that you see the size of the holes. You see the holes see through. You can see the screw hole on the heatsink through the holes here on the back plate. So to make sure that they match up properly. Yep. So what I do for reassembly is just to thread a few rounds on the screws, especially on this 4 key screws here, here, and here, that secure the GPU die to the heatsink. Because these 4 screws are the most important, as they ensure proper contact pressure and even contact pressure. So to ensure that the contact pressure is even, what I do is that I just initially thread them a few rounds, and then as you can see, I do a cross method where I go across. So like across, tighten a few rounds, across. So to ensure that the heatsink and the GPU die, it's comes together in an even way, and it doesn't come together in a tilted, slanted way. Because if it's tilted, slanted, then they might result in improper contact and high temps. Then after that, there are 4 more screws, one here, one here, and one here. Okay, and there's that. So GPU is assembled, and we go into benchmarks. Let me see. Okay, so this is the first set of benchmarks. Let's go to 2 times speed, right? And you'll see that the temps have much improved. So this is the temps after my first application of PTM 7950 compared with what was the initial temps. Here, let me view by list. Yep. Okay. All right. So these are the temps before repaste. And I don't know whether I can zoom in. Oh, okay. Maybe I can do this way. Yep. So these are the temps before repaste. You can see it spike up to 105 immediately, right? And now we are hovering in the 94, peak of 95. So the peak was 106. Fan speed is a lot reduced, right? It hit a max of 3005. In this case, the fan is hovering around 2006. So it's a lot reduced. Other stuff that maybe we can note, maybe GPU video clock. Right, you can see that here GPU video clock is heavily throttled down, 1003. In this case, GPU video clock is hovering around 1680 or 1007 at the max. Here only hit a max of 1605. So the max is less than our average when it's thermally throttled. And obviously it will result in better performance. So we can actually finish this benchmark. Okay, so we will close that. We can finish this benchmark, but it is, yeah, it's not ideal. So right now, based on my experience of repasting GPUs, right, seeing this kind of hotspot temps, by the way, my ambient room temperature is about 30 degrees Celsius in my room in Singapore. Seeing this kind of hotspot temps is still considered high. So it's still considered abnormal, and normally this would need some adjustment or further repaste. So yeah, still considered high. So in the end, benchmarks ended, and yeah, this is the score. So average FPS of 180, average score of 4537. But I suspected there were issues probably because of the thickness or the hardness of the Gelid thermal pads. So this is the reason I mentioned that replacing thermal pads is very tricky, because you need to figure out the correct softness of the thermal pads other than just the size. And you really don't know the softness of the thermal pads until you actually buy and try them. To be on the safer end, you could actually go to Thermal Party. One of the thermal parties I highly recommend is the Upsiren UTP, Upsiren UTP-8. Yeah, is this one. So it's a pink thermal party, and I've tried it myself. And another fellow YouTube content creator called Snarks Domain has heavily tested it and recommended it as well. So it is not cheap. I don't think it's this cheap. Normally, wow, this really cheap. This is actually a really good deal. I don't know actually this is legit or not. Yeah, but there's shipping costs. So if you add shipping costs and all that, yeah. But this is a pretty good deal. You can get, yeah, usually I go for 100 gram or 50 gram of it, because you do need a significant amount of thermal putty. So for 100 gram is about $32. Yeah, and you can use it for quite a bit, because you do need a lot of thermal putty if you are using it for VRAM. So yeah, if you are concerned about softness of the thermal pads, I would recommend this UTP-8 thermal putty. It's messier. It makes the PCB looks messy because it's a bit flaky and powdery and all that. But it works really well, and there's no fear of softness, because thermal putty, what it does is that it is a putty. It's very soft. It's like Play-Doh or plasticine. So it molds itself to the shape of whatever you want it to contact. So just make sure that you apply enough, and then it will mold itself over there. So that is my recommendation if you're worried about thermal pad softness. Yep, so there's that. And what else? So obviously that's not ideal. So what I did was I actually changed it. No, this PNG of the Gelid thermal pads and this one. Okay, so I didn't record when I actually changed the thermal pads, but this is the benchmark test which I recorded after I changed the thermal pads. So what I did was I actually changed it to this, right? So I changed it to this OEM brand of thermal pads. You can see that there's no brand. It's rated for 16 watt per metric Kelvin or per meter Kelvin. And this is, you can see here on the labeling here, it is 2.0 millimeters as well. Yep, so a 2.0 millimeter pad. That's right here. So same thickness as the Gelid ones. And actually you can't really see it, but I tried to like compress it a bit to squeeze it to show on the camera that it is actually softer. Like it gives a little bit under my fingers. So, but in terms of like feel, it is definitely a lot softer than the Gelid GP-Extreme thermal pads. So this is the one that I used and I changed. And where was my video? After haven't benchmark after the softer. So this one, yeah. So this video is the one that the benchmark that I ran after I changed the pads out. So no longer using the Gelid 2.0, but using that OEM 16 watt per meter Kelvin OEM thermal pads, which is softer. I really like it. So if we compare, can I have more than one open? Let's try and open it with like, okay, what's this media player? Can I choose in the legacy media player? Okay, and let's resize it smaller so we can have a like a side-by-side view. Oh, okay, so this already done. I can't really zoom in here. Okay, what can we see from here and from here? Okay, so this is a side by side. Yeah. So in this one is with the OEM 2.0 millimeter thermal pads, and this is with the Gelid thermal pads. Maybe I'll try and pause them so that we can have a clearer side-by-side comparison of the results. First thing that stands out is that this is after, maybe let's go to the same time in the benchmarks. 5, okay, so about 5 minutes. And this is also about 5 minutes. So to see that it is fair comparison, this is 5 minute 38 and this is 5 minute 22. So decently fair, right? Both benchmarks have ran about 5 minutes. So there will be a same amount of heat soak. Average GPU temps here is about 84. Then with the better thermal pads, note that I didn't change the PTM 7950. I just re-screwed it back on. So the PTM 7950 application has not been altered. Then you can see that the average GPU temps are lower by about, this is how many? So 7, this is 7 degrees. So average GPU temps are now 7 degrees lower with different pads, with the softer pads. And then if we look at our hotspot, it's now 87 here. Previous hotspot was hitting about 94. Or we can compare the peak. So the peak hotspot was 97 with the harder Gelid 2.0 thermal pads. And with the softer OEM thermal pads, it is 7 degrees different. It peaked out at 90.7. So temperatures are a lot lower. And if we look at the score, so you can see the previous score was about FPS of 180, score of 4537 on Heaven benchmark. And with the new one, basically is the one with the softer thermal pads. Now that we have better contact pressure, not only are the temps lower, the FPS, average FPS and the score is higher on benchmark as well. So FPS, we have now 184.6 compared to 180 earlier, and a score of 4651. So can we see it? Yeah, side by side. So score is higher now. So this is higher score with better contact pressure with softer pads, higher FPS and higher score again. So score has gone up, 4651 compared to 4537. So overall, things are better. Temps are lower. What about fan speed? So another one is important is fan speed. Note that on the higher temps, when the GPU temps are higher, the fan speed is higher, right? So this is higher fan speed means more noise, right? It's noisier. And this is lower fan speed, 2004 on the lower temps one with the softer pad, so there's lower fan speed, so that means less noise, so not as annoying. Definitely we want lower fan speeds and cooler temps. So this is pretty impressive, because if you think about it a little bit more, we are achieving lower temps with lower fan speeds, whereby this, it needed higher fan speeds and still the temps are higher, just because of the thickness of the thermal pads. Note that the PTM 7950 application has not changed. But for those who are familiar with PTM 7950, they will also say that actually PTM 7950 needs a little bit of break-in time. It needs several thermal cycles to kind of break in, and once it has broken in, that means the phase change process has been completed. It will perform even better, and I did that. So I did actually subject my GPU, this particular GPU, to several rounds of heat loads, at least 3 rounds of heating and cooling. That's on the Gelid thermal pads. And then after a few days, I actually did, like just today, which is I think 2 days after the repaste, I did another run. Where is it? Benchmark third run. This one, right? So the score actually improved. There's 8 minutes into the benchmark, and I would compare it with this. This is benchmark with the thermal pads. Okay, so we can have a side by side. Maybe zoom out a bit. Then this one we zoom out a bit, so we can have a fairer side by side. Okay, so this is the third run. So this is third run. Actually, in theory, it's more than the third run. It's like the third day. So it's like the third day. Yeah, it's actually like the 5th or 6th run of the benchmark already. So this one was probably like second day. So this is the second day, and it's been probably like maybe 4 heat loads, so 4 benchmark runs and so on. And let's compare the results. 77 on the average. Okay, so this benchmark has run for 14 minutes, while this okay, this is not a fair comparison, dang, because it's 14 minutes versus 8. Let's compare with the video. Yeah, so this might not be a fair comparison, because it's only 8-minute benchmark run. Video. Okay, so let's fast forward to a point in the video where we have a similar time frame. Okay, I think this is fairer. So this is a bit on the fairer end. Let's compare here. So in the video, we have 9 minutes and 10 on our benchmark run. So it's ran for 9 minutes, and this benchmark has ran for 8 minutes. So slightly longer here, but we could, I mean, to be fair, we could fast forward it to 8 minutes if we want. Yeah, 8:20. Yeah, so around here. So there's 8:20 on the left, which is, this is probably, so this is third day. And this is probably second day. Okay, so on second day, what are the temps that we have? 76.8. Third day is slightly better, 74.8. How about peak hotspot? So peak hotspot is 90.7, and you can see here peak hotspot is now down to 87.6, right? So it is lower. Okay, zoom in a bit more. Yeah, so peak hotspot is lower by about 3 degrees, 90.7 here. This on second day. Second day again. This is on third day again. Okay, so peak hotspot has been lowered. How about fan speed? Fan speed has been lowered as well. 2004, now is 2003. So fan speed is lower, peak hotspot is lower. Memory temps are 74, which is okay. Then FPS is slightly higher. So on the third day, so again, this is third day, you can see FPS is higher, benchmark scores is higher on the third day, 4007 compared to 4006. So PTM 7950 does work better the more you use it, until it hits a certain point where it's finally broken in enough that the performance will stay consistent. But it is pretty good. So even though this is from AliExpress, and initially I was doubting whether this was the original PTM 7950, but looking at the numbers and how they improve over time after days and after several benchmark run, this is actually, yeah, I think this is legit. So I highly do recommend PTM 7950 if you are thinking of repacing your GPUs. This is definitely a lot safer than liquid metal, because you don't need to spend a lot of time trying to perfect your application, and you don't have to worry about insulation and spillage killing your GPU. Yeah, it's pretty good. But talking about memory temps, yeah, this OEM one does perform a little bit worse than the Gelid one, but it could be for several reasons. So this is 74 and peak of memory temp of 76, right? If we look at the ones that we have with the Gelid, I think this is, do I have it here? OEM. Yep. So with the benchmark, this is my benchmark results after the Gelid. Okay, so the benchmark result after Gelid pads, you will see that Gelid pads actually only peak the memory temps using the Gelid pads peak out at 72, and it averaged at 70. So in other words, the Gelid pads do work better. They transfer heat better, but you could also argue this because the heatsink was less heat soaked. Because if we need to remember that average GPU hotspot temps were higher, that means there is poorer thermal conductivity and transfer from the GPU die to the heatsink, as compared to now with the softer pads. We now have better heat transfer, so there's more heat transferring from the GPU die into the heatsink. The heatsink is hotter, it gets heat soaked more. So when something is getting heat soaked more, there's poorer thermal transfer from the memory chips to the heatsink, because the heatsink is hotter, right? If the heatsink is colder, there's better memory, there's better transfer of heat from the memory. So it is quite hard to argue whether the Gelid pads actually perform better than these softer ones, because it's not an apples to apples comparison, whereby, yeah, because now we have more heat going to the heatsink on this side, as compared there's less heat going to the heatsink on this side. So yeah, we can't really compare. So comparing thermal pads has always been tricky. Yeah, a lot of things need to be the same, like the softness of the thermal pads need to be the same to ensure that there's sufficient pressure between the the GPU die and the heatsink and so on. So that is that. So if this video has helped you in any way, please give me a like and subscribe on the video, because on the channel, because I do more of these. Trying to make it into, trying to make Vamos gaming systems into a full-time business, where I can build PC systems for you guys, for Singaporeans, and where I can like find the best deals for Singapore PC builders and PC users, and so on. So yeah, so promoting my social media really helps me a lot. Okay, and thank you for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.